Hi everyone, A.B. Shepherd here. You can call me A.B. And I don't like calling you dear readers or faithful readers or whatever. So I've decided that I'm going to call you A-Bites, which is really short for A-B-ites. So from now on, you're A-Bites whenever I talk to you. I hope that's all right with you. I know it's a little bit narcissistic, but I can't keep calling you faithful readers because I think that's just a little bit too impersonal. I thought I'd try something a little bit different today on the blog. I thought I would try doing a video book review. So here we go. Today I've read Oh Dear Silvia by Dawn French. I have to tell you first of all that I am a big Dawn French fan. I love her in just about everything she does, but most especially in The Vicar of Dibley, which she did for quite a number of years. She's written a couple of other books. She's written a book called Dear Fatty, which I've not read. And I think that's the name. I'm not quite sure at the moment. But the other book she's read is called A Tiny Bit Marvelous, which is a fiction novel. And she wrote that a few years ago. And I actually read and reviewed that a couple of years ago on the blog. So I will post a link to that review when I post this review as well. Now, A Tiny Bit Marvelous was quite unexpected for me when I read that. It just wasn't quite where I thought Dawn would go if she wrote fiction. I thought she'd write something not quite so dark. It was still humorous, but it was fairly dark. Oh Dear Silvia is also a little bit dark. Not as funny as A Tiny Bit Marvelous. I didn't really find a lot of humor in Oh Dear Silvia. And that's okay. That I'm not saying Dawn has to be funny all the time. She's a person and she's got a lot more sides to her than just her funny bone. So, that said, Oh Dear Silvia is the story of a woman named Sylvia who is lying in a hospital bed in a coma. The story is told from the perspective of all of the visitors that Sylvia has while she's lying in that hospital bed. We never get to hear from Sylvia herself, but that's okay. The book reminds me slightly of a couple of other books that I've read. One was called Bluff by Lenore Scovel. In Bluff, the main character was also lying in a hospital bed in a coma. However, in Bluff, the story was told from the patient's perspective. Also, I recently read The Case Giver's Memoirs by Dan Thompson, which I opted not to review on the blog. The Caseworker's Memoirs is a series of short stories of people who have phobias, which were tied together by the caseworker who was remembering these short stories while he was in the process of mourning his wife and trying to get his life back together. At any rate, I don't really like short stories. I didn't really like The Caseworker's Memoir because of that. And I'm not saying anything bad against The Caseworker's Memoirs. I'm just saying I don't like short stories. And the reason that I bring that up is because the way Oh Dear Silvia is written, basically every person who visits Sylvia in the hospital is telling their own short story of their relationship with Sylvia. The difference is that in the case of Oh Dear Silvia, the short stories are not so short. We actually get a complete picture of each person that's visiting Sylvia. We get them in small chunks because they alternate chapters, which is fine. But they're not as short, which makes it a better experience for me. However, up until I got about halfway through the book to about chapter 22, I will admit I was a little bit bored and I was thinking about giving up on this book. But when I got to chapter 22, it hooked me. Dawn hooked me at chapter 22. And it was the character, I'll give a slight spoiler here, it was the character of Kat who hooked me in. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the book is if you've watched Dawn in just about anything she's ever done, she has a very specific speech pattern. And the character of Kat really comes across with that speech pattern. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. The other thing is that the ending was quite satisfying. It was a little bit abrupt. I would have liked to have seen just a little bit more of what happened to Kat in the ending, but it was complete and it was satisfying. So if you're a fan of Dawn, do pick up this book and read it, but don't expect it to be a laugh riot. It's not. It is a worthwhile read. If I had to give it a star rating, I would probably give it 3 stars. But I can forgive Dawn a lot because she's awesome. So that's my video book review of Oh Dear Silvia by Dawn French. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of the video review. Thanks, A-Bites. Talk to you later.